Howdy, hi, Spaceman Josh here, and today I wanted to talk about astronomy naming conventions. So essentially, when you look at when someone's talking about something that they were looking at in space, and they say this random word with some numbers and letters, you can actually kind of tell what it is they're actually looking at. And so I'm going to go ahead and jump right in. So the first thing I want to sort of talk about is sort of stars. Now, with stars, there are the mythological names, the ones that sort of mostly probably know best, like Betelgeuse, Sirius, Vega, those sort of names. Those are ones that were given in sort of ancient times. There's maybe somewhere between 200, 300 or so of those stars that have those types of names. But other than that, when we actually want to go and talk about naming stars, we talk about them in terms of what constellation they're in and the order of brightness, so like the first brightest star in that constellation. For example, Betelgeuse is one of the brightest stars for us in Orion, and thus it is named Alpha Orionis. And so that can get pretty interesting because in the sense of we don't have a lot of Greek letters, and so there's we don't have a lot of sort of that thing with we have alpha, beta, gamma, delta. We only have a few select of those. There's probably something around 20 to 30. I don't exactly know the exact number, but that's not enough. So when we run out of Greek letters, we start to use numbers. One of the most famous systems with this is 51 Pegasi, and it was the first main sequence star that we found an exoplanet going around it. So essentially, when we were looking for exoplanets, the exoplanet we found around 51 Pegasi, it was the first exoplanet to be found orbiting a main sequence star, which is really cool. However, in modern times, we can also name them based off of who found them or where they are in the sky, and this tends to have names that are pretty ugly. Some examples are Kruger 60A and BD +5 DEG 1668. Some of these are they're not the most appealing names to look at. However, they do sort of have some significance as to how they were named. Another way that we go about naming stars is if it's a variable star, then they get sort of, in a way, sort of double Greek letters in terms of like they have AA or AB, AC, all the way to ZZ or Zeta Zeta. But once you run out of Greek letters, we start using numbers, and we actually start with 677 once we run out of those sequences, because there are 676 possible combinations of the double Greek letters. And then another way that maybe a lot of you've probably heard of with some of these systems is sort of if we have a specific way of finding an exoplanet, like with the Kepler satellite that recently finally went down. The Kepler satellite, its job was looking for exoplanets, and so there were the stars that it analyzed once it found a planet around that star. Essentially, the star could also be denoted as Kepler dash in whatever order it was found in. For example, Kepler 11 or Kepler 452 or Kepler 103. Essentially, those would be like the main idea for the star, and then you would add different things based on the actual planet itself. Thus, I also now want to start talking about exoplanets. So for a single star system, for example, I believe Kepler 452, I mentioned that in the Kepler one. From my memory, it's a single star system. So when you have a single star system with the exoplanet, you add a lowercase letter to the end of the host star's name, and it starts with the letter B. The letter A you can sort of talk about with that being the star itself. And it's also based on the order of discovery. And if the exoplanets are discovered at the same time, it's whomever's closer. And so, for example, the system 55 Cancri, which means it's the 55th brightest star in the constellation Cancer. 55 Cancri B was found in 1996, while as 55 Cancri C and D were found at the same time in 2002. So 55 Cancri C is closer than D. However, in 55 Cancri E was found in 2004. That's actually closer than 55 Cancri B. So E is closer than B, even though E was found later on. It can get pretty weird to analyze it in the sense, but that's why you have to remember it's by order of discovery, and then by order of whoever's closer if it's found at the same time. Because we also have 55 Cancri F, which was found in 2007, and that's between C and D. And so 55 Cancri overall has a total of 5 discovered planets orbiting it. And to talk about the host star, you could also call it 55 Cancri A. And so that's sort of the idea with single star systems. When you have a multi-star system, it's a similar concept, only you add a capital letter for in terms of the brightness of the host star compared to the system itself, and then the lowercase letter ordered by discovery. So, for example, 16 Cygni is the multi-star system, and so when you want to talk about 16 Cygni BB, it's the second brightest star in that system, and it's the first planet discovered by that system. Or like HD 41004 AB, A would be capitalized and the B would be lowercase. A would mean it's the brightest star in that system, and it's the first planet discovered orbiting that star. And with these naming conventions with exoplanets, some exceptions do exist. It's just how it is. For example, there is the pulsar PSR 1257, and some of the planets around that are referred to with just capital letters, which is I don't exactly know why, but that's just how it is. And sometimes there are those exceptions. Another nomenclature is, instead of giving them letters, you give them Roman numbers in order of the planet's positions, and something that that you can actually see if you with a game that I commonly play called EVE Online. That's actually how they have their systems. They just they have the star, and then they use Roman numerals based on how far away the planet is compared to other planets. And that's another nomenclature you can use in terms of denoting the names of the planets. And actually, in July 2014, the International Astronomical Union actually sort of launched this sort of thing to give exoplanets proper names, and it went through this whole public voting and all this other stuff. And around December 2015 is when it finished, and they were actually here's some of these names, and some of them were Orion, Dagon, Drugger, Galileo. The list goes on. You can find those names easily if you want to do sort of a web search. And so they started giving proper names to some of these exoplanets. Ironically, we also have never actually we haven't captured an actual image of most of these planets. The only real sort of image we have of an exoplanet is an infrared image, and so we've never actually seen the visible, invisible light what an exoplanet looks like, and we're already giving them names, which I think is kind of cool. But that's the most I've been able to find for exoplanets. And now with the nebulas are kind of interesting. A lot of what we do with nebula is we just sort of name them after what they look like. There is a nebula in the constellation Pegasus that looks like a snot ball, kind of. It's a very loosely looking like a snot ball, and so we call it the snot ball nebula. And it's also near the nose of the constellation. And so that's sort of the idea of we'd like to call it what it looks like. And what it looks like is also very much to interpretation. So it's always like, that's supposed to be a horse, or that's supposed to be a crab, and it's like, okay. And so it's very interesting. However, they do also, a lot of them have scientific names based on what catalogs they're in or what constellation they're in, things like that. For example, there's the Orion Nebula, which is just below the Orion's belt. Other names for the Orion Nebula is Messier 42 or M42, NGC 1976, LBN 974, Sharpless 281. All these different things. A lot of them are catalogs that you can actually find the Orion Nebula in that catalog. And it's just these things that we you can call them any number of these things, and they all mean the same object, which is something that can go across both stars and exoplanets as well. It's one of those things of sometimes things just have multiple names just because of the way we look for them and the way we find them and the way we put them in lists. It varies very much so on a lot of that, and so there are a lot of objects that have multiple names, and it's very interesting to sort of look at some of those things and why some things do and why some things don't. And I didn't, I'm not going to go into much on some of the very specific things with some of the other objects. If you want to, you can also look up some of these things. It's very interesting to start and look into, like, is the way we name a black hole different from the way we name a star? Even though a black hole is just what the end of a life cycle of a star and that sort of thing. It's if you want, I highly recommend you go into and like actually look into some of these things. I'm not going to cover them in this video. It would go on forever if I did. So that's all I really have for you today. Thank you for watching. If you liked it, go ahead and hit the like button. If you want to see more of my videos, go ahead and hit that subscribe. If you want, you can hit the bell. It will turn on notifications, let you know right when I upload. Other than that, thank you for traveling with me today. Spaceman Josh, out.